Last week on a little journey, or actually week before last, I guess it was. Well, it's been several weeks I've been on this topic. I thought about it for the first of the year, and used to we would have New Year's meetings here. We would have a meeting and get together, have a big dinner, and and preach about setting goals and setting the vision. So this year I started out and I said, what is our mission in life? And I use this phrase. It's a word that's commonly used in the Christian community, and it's the word save or get saved. And I said, our mission in life truly is to get saved, but it's to save ourselves. It's not to save someone else. It's not our job, even though religion has put that burden on us to make us think that it's our job. And so we've bought that for a lot of years, hundreds of years as a matter of fact. And so it's difficult to take away old patterns and old thoughts and the things that we have been trained to think. Y'all know that, right? You find that out?
Yes.
It is difficult, and I know that, and I do understand that. I wanted to read. I'm going to read from the Song of Solomon. So if you can, I'm going to start there from the Song of Solomon. At least we'll start there. If you want to find that, it's that little book in the middle of your Bible. So if you find Psalms, go to Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and then the Song of Solomon. It's just a couple page or two. So see if you can find it, and I want to read from it and talk about it here in just a little bit. Studying Scripture from the ancient Hebrew code is a task. I'll say it that way. It's a real task for anybody. I don't care who you are. And I remember when I first started doing it, I thought, this is impossible. I need somebody to instruct me and to help me. And I never was able to find anybody that could do that other than through, I took a course from Dr. Roy Blizzard, who was a Hebrew scholar and taught in Austin, Texas, at a university there. Dr. Roy Blizzard and David Blevins. I took a Hebrew course from him back in the middle 80s, 84, 85. And that kind of started me out with the hunger. They didn't really teach me much, but they started me with the hunger for that. And then I went from there, met a guy in Nashville, Jimmy Snow, who is actually Hank Snow's son. And Jimmy Snow had a church up there, and he was also a Hebrew enthusiast and was hungry for that, for Hebrew, and got to know him in the late 80s and early 90s. I haven't seen him in a number of years. I don't know if he's still living. I hope he is, but he also was a Hebrew enthusiast. And then from there, I kept, just by books would come my way. And so books then began to be my teacher. And so it was more or less a struggle learning things that I didn't know because I wasn't familiar with it at all. I mean, I took Spanish in high school, but it was my sleeping class. Because in high school, in Spanish class, we had these little cubicles. And so everybody had these little cubicles. I think we was in this one big room, and there were 30 cubicles in there. And so I could sit there and take my hour nap, and nobody would bother me. So they let me sleep through that. So I flunked Spanish. But I took it because they required you to take it as a language. And I had my choice between Spanish and Latin. And so I took Spanish. Sí, señor. So anyway, those were my language skills. So when I began to really do deep research and study Hebrew, and I realized, the original concept and idea of the Bible comes from the Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew, which is actually, it's a form of Egyptology. It's almost the same thing as Egyptian glyphs. And glyphs is a word that a lot of people aren't familiar with. Glyph is just a character. That's what it means. Just like our English A, that's a glyph. That's a character. And so in the English language, we have 26 characters that I'm using, and I do it southernly to try to communicate. So I just jam those 26 letters, glyphs together and make up words. And some of them are made up, you know. So, and you do the same thing. We all do that because that's how we communicate in English, right? Right?
Yes.
Okay. And so Hebrew has 22 glyphs, but they were not intended to be a language. They were intended to be characters, glyphs, that represent different facets of energy. In other words, 22 facets of energy, and those 22 facets of energy were designed to build, because they're energy, they were designed to build the tabernacle or the temple or the house that God desires to move into. So God's going to build a house, and of course He's going to move into that house. And of course we know, or many of us don't know, we don't think about it, we are that house. Every human being is that house that God has moved into. And God has moved into His house, and God is in His house, okay? Not going to be, not sometime in the sweet by and by in the future when y'all get to go to heaven and see Him in His big mansion somewhere down there on Main Street. I'm sorry, that is about as far-fetched a fantasy as anything that anybody's ever tried to sell us, but we bought a hook, line, and sinker, and the sad thing is most people still hold on to it. Subconsciously, of course, that's what I'm talking about when I'm trying to pull ideas out of us that are lies, that are erroneous, that are not true. It's difficult many times. It's like trying to pull somebody out of the ditch when they're stuck. Because we just think these things, you know what I'm saying? We just think it's hard to not think these things. So, when you look at the Bible from the ancient Hebrew, and you begin to realize that it's a symbolic language about myths, allegories, and codes, and different things, it changes the whole structure of everything. So, you know, for a number of years now, a lot of people thought that I didn't preach out of any other book than the book of Genesis, and that's almost true. And the reason that is because I'm constantly going to the foundation. Because I know that Jesus said in Matthew 7, if the foundation of the house is not built right, storms in life will come, period. I don't care. You can be holier than thou, or at least think that you are. You can live righteous, or at least think that you do. But storms are still going to come your way. And if your house is built on the sand, Jesus said very clearly, your house is going to suffer a lot of damage. Therefore, we constantly suffer a lot of damage. Why is that so? I mean, you know, constantly we think we're in this war or this struggle. I hear it come from, quote, Christians' mouths. They're always in a battle. Always. They're always fighting something or somebody. The devil or this person or that, whatever. Or, you know, that old Flip Wilson statement, the devil made me do it.
Yes.
It's not me, it's the devil's fault, bless God. I've got to blame somebody, you know.
Yep.
When the truth of the matter is, it's nobody's fault. It's not your mom and daddy's fault, even though your mama and daddy may have made a lot of mistakes in helping you along your way. Mine did. Doesn't make them bad, doesn't make them wrong. They just innocently made mistakes. You and I did the same exact thing. I know I made a lot of mistakes.
Yes.
And so I can't point my finger. I can't blame somebody. I can't say, well, it's their fault, this fault, that. It's me. I have to look in the mirror. I can't heal you. I can only heal me. And I can only heal me by doing what the essence or the energy or the source is directing me to do. I can only be strong for me. You know, I can pray with you. We do that. We say that. Whatever that means, we're really not sure what that means anymore. Because what are you going to do? You're going to pray to a God out yonder somewhere to come and do something in here? That's backwards, you know. Because God's already in here. Even if you're sick, God's in here. Even if you're ill, even if you're in prison, even God's still in here. As long as you're drawing breath, God's there.
Yes, He is.
And so we always look outside ourselves to try to fix ourselves when the truth of the matter is it's all in ourselves. Every bit of it. Either the mistake or the correction. It's all in here. And so bringing it back in here is a part of what I feel my mission might be. It's helping us to find out who we are and then being that. And that doesn't mean that I'm there, because I'm not there. I'm just like you. I am walking the path, but I'm beginning to learn new ideas and I'm beginning to learn things that I'm trying to embrace. For instance, and I'll talk some about this as I go through this morning. I constantly will say, well, I'm in this struggle. Y'all may not ever say that. I'm struggling with this issue. I'm struggling with this problem. Or I'm in a battle with this issue. Or I'm in a battle with this problem. That's the idea that we've gotten from religion, because we have created a God in our image, and we have made that God that we have created in our image constantly in battle. He's in warfare. He's constantly struggling. He's jealous. He's angry. He's filled with rage and wrath. He's a murderer. He's a destroyer. We created that ideology of God, and we have a hard time getting rid of it. That's what we have done. That's not what Scripture defines as the source. And that source is a source of love and compassion, non-judgmental. And yet on the other side of that coin, we created this judgmental God that's constantly watching us, going to get us, writing it down, checking the list and everything like that. So it's hard to reverse our thinking and our ideologies. So I'm working at trying to change my own. I'm not in a struggle. I'm on a dance floor. I'm not in a war. I am working and playing with this energy system. Now, if I want to call that a war, then I'll act like it's a war. But if I realize it's a game and I'm playing in this game, I can chill off for just a little bit. If I realize it's a dance, I don't have to jerk and trip and push and shove. I'm dancing. I may step on your toe. I may not be in step with you. You know, for two to dance, it takes a long time for them to get into a place where they're in harmony.
Or discovery. I thought of the word.
Discovery.
Yeah, that's what it is about. It's discovering.
Discovering who we are. It is. That's a beautiful word. So I'm not struggling. I'm not in war. I'm not in a battle. I'm in a dance. And in the dance of life, and that's exactly what it is, it's a dance of life, and God has called it a game. God has made it into a game that we play. And if I look at it and I approach it in this different fashion than rather to think I'm in war with the devil, I'm in this struggle or I'm in this battle, I'm in this discovery. Thank you, Beverly. I'm in this discovery. And in this discovery, I'm learning how to dance. I'm learning how to play this game called life. And if I approach it like that, I will begin to see it a lot different than I have in the past. So, just like dancing with a partner, it takes a while to learn to do that dance. So, if you find the Song of Solomon, I have all these books up here, and let me put this right here where I can get to them. Let me find it real quick myself. The Song of Solomon. I want to read this first verse and second verse.
What chapter?
Chapter 1. Just right out the start gate. We're going to read chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. That's all I want to read out here right now, because as I said last week, and just get a copy of last week's CD, I said last week, most people look at this book as the romance book. I've never heard a preacher preach out of this book, because most of them are afraid to preach out of it because it has what would we call sexual language in it. It has innuendos in it. And that's because of the way it's been translated. But if we begin to see what it's saying, it is intimate because it's about you and your relationship with God, and how that relationship is built and how that relationship is established is through your breath. Through the two breaths that you breathe. Your inhale is one breath and your exhale is another breath. And so that's what the whole book is about. This little book has only got 8 chapters, only 2 pages maybe. And that's basically what the book is about. It's about breathing and about knowing how to breathe, learning the breath and seeing what the breath is doing. Yet it uses a language that is sensual in the most sensual aspect of the word. And actually, when I thought about that sensual or sensuality, I thought, well, some people would say, well, what does that mean? And I think most people would realize or recognize that being sensual or having a sensual relationship has to do with sexual. And I looked it up, and that was the first definition of it. Sensuality was being sexual, intimately. And so that is what this book is about. That's what God is about with you and me. Into me, you see. That's intimacy. That's where God comes into me to be intimate sexually with me. And that's a relationship. That's a union. That's something that I establish. That's something that I have to work at. Okay? And so the wording in a lot of it, like if you look at verse 13, just real quickly, I said this last week. Let me just say it and read it real quick. Chapter 1, verse 13. A bundle of myrrh is my well-beloved unto me. He shall lie all night between my breasts. And so I made a statement like a pun. I said, so he starts out, he's going to sleep between her breasts all night long. And, you know, you have to realize this is not literal language. It's not. You know, this book, because it gets so intimate like that, you have to kind of back away and say, this is not literal. And I make this statement, that's the same way the whole Bible is. It's not literal. It's never meant to be taken literal, and our problem has been we've been taught to take it literal. I mean, I was taught that when I done seminary studies with Dake. That was the very thing he taught me constantly. You have to take it literal. And I would say, well, Brother Dake, over here in the book of Revelations, when it calls Jesus a lamb, then is he a four-footed beast? And he would, you know how he would respond to that? Tomfoolery, Brother Lynn. You know, he would get upset. I said, so that's not literal then, is it? He said, no. You know, and they wouldn't like that. Because there are times, it's like Jesus said in the Gospel of John, it's the only place he says it. He said, if you're really going to follow me, then you got to drink my blood and eat my flesh. I said, Brother Dake, is that literal? Or what part are we going to saw off of? You going to cut a piece off his hamstring? You going to eat his leg? Huh? Are you going to drink his blood? Well, tomfoolery, that's not literal. I said, well, I think the way the whole book is written, it's not literal. It's a spiritual book. It's a book about the energy and how the energy which we've been taught to call God is intimate with me. And so it's a book of beautiful symbols, beautiful stories, beautiful fairy tales is what they are. They're all fairy tales, and in these fairy tales, just exactly like Cinderella or some of the other beautiful fairy tales that we see in this book, if we can look at them with an open mind and an open heart, which is difficult because religion has trained us not to do that. But if we can do that, our eyes will be open in a different fashion. So look at verse 1 and 2 with me, and I'm going to read it from the King James translation. It says, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. That's a pretty good way to get started out with it, right? Well, in Hebrew, I was going to read it to you right here. In Hebrew, actually, instead of it saying the Song of Songs, it actually says Sha'er Ha-Sha'erim, which doesn't mean song and doesn't mean songs in Hebrew. But that's how it says it. It says Sha'er Ha-Sha'erim Esher Les Shalamah. Les Shalamah. That word Les Shalamah got wrongly translated Solomon. Should never have been translated Solomon. Because actually the word means residue. You say, wow, okay, well what in the world is residue? Actually it should start out and it should say this. The residue of residues. Now, what about residue? Are y'all familiar with the word residue? Most people are not. Let me tell you why it's a chemistry term. It's a word that's used in chemistry where you will take certain gases or certain things and boil them or cook them down until you have just a powder, and that little powder is called the residue. You can actually call it the remnant. So the word residue is an alchemical word used, 400, 500, 600, 800 years commonly in alchemy. And if you understood alchemy, alchemy is not something that you literally do, but most people talk about alchemy. They talk about turning lead into gold. Y'all all heard that, haven't you? Mm-hmm. An alchemist, what does? And so people think, oh, these chemists, These chemists 4, 5, 6, 800 years ago, they were going and getting buckets full of lead, and they were in their little lab, in that laboratory, and they were cooking that lead down, and they were doing hocus pocus on it so they could turn it into gold, because lead is worthless and gold is priceless. So that makes sense, don't it? But really, when you look at it and you start to think, it's not about that at all. Residue, alchemy, is about turning your animal human nature into your divine God nature. That's what alchemy is all about. It's about you taking your flesh, your physical man, your lower man, that 12-year person you got stuck in, with all of its little whimpers and whines and all of its habits and all of the things that it got stuck in those first 12 years, because that's all, every one of us got stuck there in our physical, carnal nature. And most of us have never grown past it, including myself. Most of us we still are struggling with that when we should be playing with it. We should be learning to dance with it. When we learn to dance with it, we get in the harmony of the dance, we'll overcome a lot of those issues, a lot of those immature problems. But we all face them. I'm not trying to beat anybody up, and I don't want you to beat yourself up, but I'm just trying to get us to see something different. Quit struggling and start dancing. Quit fighting, quit getting into a war, and start playing a game with yourself. Instead of all this battling that we do, you know, when you get in a battle with yourself, then you're going to battle with your spouse, you're going to battle with your kids, you're going to battle with your neighbors, you're going to battle with your work. You get in all that battle mode. And you know, we used to do that. I used to come down here in the mornings. Gosh, 20, 25 years ago, I would come down here every morning between 5 and 6 o'clock, and for over an hour, I would pace back and forth out there in that sanctuary, and I would shandala, and I was cussing the devil in tongues. I'd call the devil this and the devil that, and you get here and you go there, and bless God, I'm doing warfare prayer.
Yep.
And all of the deacons and everybody else that I could get in the church to come down here and help me fight the devil, bless God. We're going to cast him out from the north, the south, the east, and the west. We cleared him out of this North Georgia area. Hallelujah. Oh my goodness, all that nonsense. We did it. We did it. We felt good about it too, all right. Not sure we did any good, but we still felt good. You know, it's like batting at the air. You bat it all out. You work up a sweat batting at the air. You didn't do anything, but you batted the air a whole lot, right? We did that. So this sha'er, sha'erim, esher, shalamoth, is not the Song of Solomon. Actually, and it's not, and I even have this, Date gave me my first Bible, and so I use a Date Bible, and I wore out a couple of them, matter of fact, and I know where everything's at in this Bible. So people say, why do you use that Date Bible? Well, I know where everything's at. I basically have it kind of memorized, so I just know where it's at. He actually has notes in this Bible. It's an annotated Bible, so he's got a lot of notes in it. And he says, actually, this is a song, a love letter between Solomon and his black Shulamite girlfriend. And so in Christianity, they said, oh, that can't be. I mean, he can't be having this intimate relationship outside the marriage. Because that's what it sounds like. They really are getting it on. We're going to get it on. You know, that's what it sounds like they're doing. And they ain't married yet. So that's taboo. So they said, no, it can't be that, can't be that. Well, then the Jews, they said it was a love poem between Elohim, Jehovah, and Israel, the nation of Israel, the Jewish nation. And so they've got all these kinds of things. And some of them even went so far as to say, no, actually the document dates all the way back to ancient Egypt, and it's a love letter between Isis and Osiris. So all of these ideas have come along. But what it says right here in the Hebrew code, I want to read it to you from the Hebrew code, these first two verses. The Song of Songs, this is what the King James says, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Now, let me see if I can find that and read that to you. Here's what it says in in the Hebrew code. It's just different. Listen to it. It says, the residue of residues is the witness of his peace. I'll kind of break that down for you. The residue of residues is the witness or confirms his peace. Okay? And then the second verse gets very intimate. It says this, let him inflame me with the flames he produces. Your nipples are better than wine. That's what verse 2 says in the Hebrew code. Let him inflame me. Let him, that inflame is actually to pack it. Let him inflame me with the flames that he produces. He says, your nipples are better than wine. Now, those sexual innuendos that we read about like that, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time because I'm not trying to do an exegesis of the Song of Solomon. I'm actually teaching out of Genesis first chapter in the first 4 verses in the second chapter. That's really where I'm going. That's where I'm at. And I will tell you why I'm doing that, because the Song of Solomon is a companion book to the book of Genesis. And if we don't understand that, if we don't use the ideologies that's laid down, this book, the Song of Solomon, should come before the book of Genesis. But we don't have that mindset because we have allowed religion to chronologically put these books together in this book, this compilation of books that we call the Bible, a canon. In reality, there never was such a thing. The Catholic Church did this. They put this together. And what did they do? They had hundreds of scrolls, hundreds of letters, hundreds of things that were called Scripture. Not just 66, not just a few. They had hundreds of them. Letters of instruction, letters of teaching and training. And there was no chronological order of this one or that one. Actually, this Song of Solomon, it predates the book of Genesis as far as we look at as dates. So actually, if I started this compilation of books out with the Song of Solomon and began to understand what it's talking about, it might make a little bit of difference then when I start to look at the book of Genesis and realize the book of Genesis is an allegory. It's not a literal story about two men or two women or a man and a woman. It is a story about you and me. It is a story about my feminine side and my masculine side, which God breathes into both of those aspects of my being. When I start to look at it that way, and I realize that the two breasts that he's talking about, the nipples that he's referring to, aren't the breast on a woman. They're actually the breath, B-R-E-A-T-H, that each one of us breathe. We breathe those two breaths. And those two breaths are in contrast to one another. In other words, your inhale and your exhale. It's that makes you live. It's that God said, okay, the Elohim, the source, it created all of this, and it says, now I've created it, now I'm going to breathe it. I'm going to live in it. I'm going to move into it. And how did he do that? The Spirit brooded over the face of the earth. Brooded over it. It began to move into it. It began to life everything, you and me. And we see that, we begin to see that, we realize those two breaths that I am learning to breathe from, those are the nipples in which I am drawing the strength and the energy and the life from, which are the essence of God, of what God is and of who God is. So, I'm trying not to get so far off my notes when I get to preaching and get myself all on rabbit trails, So, the residue of residues is what he's referring to, and it's referring to this thing that I'm talking about, this dance, this inhale, exhale, is not a warfare. It's not a struggle. And it's not a battle. But it is a dance. And it is a game. And it is something that God wants us to play in. Something God wants us to be involved in. So if we can look at this whole beautiful creation that God has created for us, then as a playground, hallelujah, we have a nice playground to play in. And we start to play, we start to get involved with it. But I want to pause just a second. I want to pick on a word right here with you to show you something. Verse 1 again, the Song of Songs, which. See that word which? We see that word right there, which. I want you to go with me to Exodus chapter 3. Just flip over there in your Bible. Exodus chapter 3. Second book of your Bible. Genesis, Exodus. Exodus chapter 3. And I want you to think about that word which. It's actually the Hebrew word esher. Esher. Which. Or it's translated that way right here in the Song of Songs. Esher. So has everybody found Exodus chapter 3? Y'all should remember this story. This is a story where Moses is up on a mountain. You remember that? He's in a high place. Moses is on a mountain. And he's in his place up there. And God said, take your shoes off your feet. Y'all remember that story? Why are you taking your shoes off? Well, you're on holy ground, right? What happens when he takes his shoes off his feet and he's on holy ground? What happens at that, in this scenario, this story? A bush is on fire, right? A bush is on fire, but it's not consumed, doesn't burn. And then Moses says these words, talking to the bush. Now, I mean, he must have been smoking marijuana or something. Or high on something. I ain't never seen nobody talk to a bush. A burning bush. I seen Jesus talk to a tree. I just punned, a little bit of pun there, a little fun. Okay. And God said, verse 14, Exodus chapter 3, and God said unto Moses, let that, you see that word that? Y'all see that word? That is the Hebrew word esher. It's translated over there in the Song of Solomon for which. Now I could read it this way. I could say, and God said unto Moses, I am which I am. It doesn't read it that way. It says, I am that I am. And it's really, it's the most profound, it's the most profound understanding if we start to see it, but you'll have to see it from the Hebrew code, and I'm going to put it on the board here, and then you can see it. You'll see what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure you'll see what I'm saying. I wanted to make this statement. Years ago, I had a Hebrew teacher out in the West. He taught at a seminary, taught at a university out there. And somehow or another, he got some of my CDs. I don't know how he got my CDs. And on one of the CDs he got a hold of, he said, you said, he called me. He actually called me on the phone. He got my number, called me on the phone. And he said, you said that Jehovah, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, was not the Tetragrammaton. And I said, well, I said, yes, I did say that. I said, every religious mindset and person thinks that it is. And I said, I can show you that it's not just by Exodus chapter 3. And he said, because you see, most people, when they do the Tetragrammaton, they do it like this. They put this word up. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Those are the four glyphs going from right to left. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. And from that Yod, we get the sound of a Y or a J. So a lot of religious people, they will call this Yahweh. Or a lot of people will call it Yehovah. Or they may even change it up and put an S or something in and call it Yahshua. Y'all have heard those terms, right? Mm-hmm. All comes from this glyph right here. Now actually what this glyph stands for, because they are symbols, Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, they're symbols of energy. And each one of these symbols represents facets of energy. And so if I wanted to look at it as the gases of the earth, I'd call it carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. Because that's what you're made up of. If they squeezed you down right now, they'd find out you are 98% carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. That's what you are. That's what makes a physical body. And so that's a formula. This set of glyphs is a formula for the creation of a physical house of any kind, whether it be human or animal. And so most people call that the Tetragrammaton. I mean, in all books I've ever read, all literature I've ever read, that's exactly what they call it, Jehovah. Jehovah, that's the Tetragrammaton. And so I was talking to this Hebrew teacher, and I said, turn over there, and I said, just read it out of you got a Hebrew Bible there, haven't you? He said, oh yeah, you got the Torah. Go ahead and get the Torah, read it. And he started reading, he said, Elohim said unto Moses, and then it got quiet on the phone. Got quiet on the phone. And I just waited. I didn't say anything. I just waited. It got real quiet. Because here's what it said. So this is And so it got quiet, and I said, that's the Tetragrammaton. What does it say? He said, don't say Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, does. Never has. I said, never has. I said, it says Eha, Aha. I said, what is that? And he was at a loss for words, and he's a Hebrew teacher in a university. He was at a loss for words. He didn't know what to say back to me. He said, well, I'm sorry, you're right. He said, I don't know how. I said, for years, I said, every book I've ever read, they use this Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh. I said, but none of them use the Aleph, Hey, Yod-Heh. I said, that's a different word, that's a different formula. And I'm going to show you why. Because I want to, this has everything, this word right here has everything in the world to do with the Song of Solomon and also the book of Genesis, especially the first 12 chapters of the book of Genesis. Because everything in the Bible is this. That's the Aleph, and that's considered number 1 in Hebrew. And this right here is the Yod, Y-U-D, or Y-O-D, and that is number 10. Can you see that, Kirby, or is that in a bad spot? Is that okay? Number 10. This is a symbol. Aleph is a symbol for number 1, for energy, for essence, for power, for that term that we've been taught to call God. We should never have called it God, because now when you say God, you're thinking of an old gray-headed man out there. We can't see clearly. But when we get to realize that's the first glyph in the Hebrew alphabet, and it refers to the source, our energy, our power, all that. And this number right here, this number 10, refers to duality. The straight up and down, the 1 refers to a male phallic, and the 0 refers to a woman's yoni. So that's the male-female principle. So when you see the Yod, number 10, in a glyph, right here, you have the Aleph and the Yod. And what this glyph actually means is Aleph, this is the Hey, this glyph right here is called Hey, H-A-Y in Hebrew. It's number 5, and it actually means feminine energy. It means the ability to produce life. That's what feminine energy is about, is the ability. You see, men have that same ability. They have a male and a female side of the brain. That's how you produce things. That's how you have thought, and you incubate that, and you do that. You grow that. So this glyph, Aleph, refers to the essence of power. This glyph, Hey, refers to life, production. This glyph, Yod, refers to male-female principle. And this glyph, Hey, refers to life. So what it says is, God is alive, man is alive. That's what that glyph means. That's exactly what that phrase is saying. This is what God was saying to Moses. This is what God was trying to communicate. Elohim, its energy system, was communicating this to Moses, whether it's through thoughts or whatever. Moses is not a literal character, but nevertheless, let's say it is just for the story's sake of it. They're communicating this very fact that God said, God is alive and man is alive. How is that? Those are your 2 breaths right there. That's the two aspects of life. Those are the 2 things that are constantly, and what we will see as we see this drama, this beautiful picture unfold through the Scriptures, we're going to see that it's a dance between the Aleph and the Yod. It's a dance. It's a game that God's playing. And God's constantly playing this game. He set this game up to play, and He's going to play it from now forever. But this word right here in the middle, that, the word right there in the middle, that, is this Hebrew word. The Aleph, the Sheen, and the Rash. I hope you can hear this. The Aleph, again, is referring to the source. The Sheen is the number 300 in Hebrew, and actually it means your breath. So now we're coming back to the breath. You've got to think about the Song of Solomon. Everything that's going on is a dance between the two breaths. B-R-E-A-T-H-S. Got translated, sadly, to say the Song of Solomon for breast. B-R-E. Everybody spell breast. But it's referring to the breath. Because everything is a dance between those two breaths. I mean, you can see how people, when they get inflamed, their breath changes. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And when you're calm, your breath changes. You know, when people go to the hospital, a lot of times they'll say, now just breathe. Especially if you're stressed out. Why? Because that's where it's at. That's where the life's at. You know, like in meditation. Meditation is not simple. It's not easy. But meditation, for me, and how I would teach people, or try to teach people to meditate, is listen to your breath. Well, you say, well, all I heard was the wind coming through my nose, and then the wind coming out of my lungs through my throat. That's all I heard. I said, good, then just listen to that. Just keep listening to that. And get your mind off of all of the other things that you got your mind on. And you'll find that the biggest difficulty you're going to run into is paying attention to this. Because this thing up here, it's not really up here, but we say this thing up here, it's in here, it's in your feet, it's all around you. We call it the mind. The mind is not your brain. The mind is designed to think. And it thinks all over. It thinks in your feet, thinks in your toes, thinks in your organs, thinks everywhere. It thinks in your stomach, it thinks all around you. It's not just in one place. But the mind is designed to think. And that's hard to quieten that down, because when you quieten that down and listen to the mind of God's voice is in the breath of God. So if I'm going to hear God, I have to shut all the other noise down and listen to the breath. So that's my definition, or my method, or my way of teaching people to meditate, is listen to your breath. Listen to the voice of the breath. So when I see this glyph right here, Asher, this is that word. It shouldn't be translated which. It should be translated that. Over in the Song of Solomon, they translated which, but it should have been translated that. Actually, it explains, and what it does, this word right here, Asher, Aleph A, S, Sheen, Rash. Okay? Asher. So this particular glyph that we have right here, Asher, it is the glyph that refers to both the Aleph and the Yod. And how does it do it? This glyph, or this set of glyphs, Asher, it explains how both the Aleph and the Yod are alive through the breath. That's what that glyph does. It explains it. As a matter of fact, what this glyph does, Asher, it is the marrying. It is the vow between the two, between the Aleph and the Yod. I could say it this way. It is the ceremonial word that unites the breath to the breath. That unites God to its creature. And that's what God said, no man can put asunder that wedding. So when God married himself to you, nobody can divide that. It ain't got nothing to do with a man and a woman standing in front of a preacher and say, till death do you part. Dear God, they made that up. They made all that stuff up. Me and you bought it hook, line, and sinker, and bought every bit of it. The scriptures are not referring to what man and woman have done to each other, or however they're doing it. You know, now they're, you know, doing it different, but it's referring to how God, that's what this blip is about. Asher, we call it that. God said, I am that. I am. He said, I married myself to myself in you. Hallelujah. I mean, and that's a wedding. That's a wedding that no man can put asunder. That's the wedding that no man can divide. And he does it. He does it through the aleph, the aleph, the breath, the sheen, the rash, the fire. So it's in that aleph, breath, rash, that God weds himself, itself, to you, whether it be he or she, because it's androgynous. It's androgynous, it's both male and female. It's not just one or the other, it's both and. So, this is the introduction to the Song of Solomon now. This wedding ceremony between the source, we call that source God, and man, we call that humanity. Okay. Now I want you to go with me to the book of Genesis. Because like I said, everything I've said is more or less introductory. It's like I'm introducing some concepts and ideas that I know are way out of the box for every one of us. And what I'm working at and getting to is this source that we call God, that the circle represents. That's what the circle represents. So the circle with the cross in the middle of it represents the source. The circle, because it's non-ending. God has no beginning of days. God has no end of days, right? God is, we call it eternal. God is everlasting. God is forever, right? That's why we have a circle, because there's nowhere that a circle can start or nowhere that it supposedly ends. And then we lay this cross in the middle of it. The cross always refers to matter, because this cross always refers to this glip up here, Yod, He, Vav, He. It refers to the carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. And so what we will see is a play with words, and we also see a play with numbers. Okay? And those numbers will happen to be the number 1, the aleph, and the yod, number 10, as they dance together in this beautiful harmony and symmetry of what God is about. So Genesis chapter 1, follow me with this. It says, get my notes right here. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. The evening and the morning were the echad. That word echad. And that word echad actually does not mean first. Actually, the word echad in Hebrew means to be alike, or it means to be united or together. It's sort of like this building block that we have, first building block we have to build an atom, A-T-O-M. DNA. First building block that we have to build the DNA structure, or to build an atom, is that right there. You know what that is? That is, it's one, but it's two. That's a strand from your father and a strand from your mother, and that created you. Every one of you. And that's basically what this word right here, it says first, but it's actually the word echad, and actually it means to be united. It means to be together. And that's exactly what happens. So the first building block that we have right out of the starting gate has to be an atom. A-T-O-M, which is an A-D-A-M. If we can get that, we can just get that and realize A-D-A-M was not the name of him. And E-V-E was not the name of her. God didn't call her E-V-E, Ha-Eva. He did. It tells you that right there in the book. Why people don't read that, I don't know. Oh, I know God created Adam and Eve. No. No, God created A-T-O-M. Out of A-T-O-M, God created all of humanity from the A-T-O-M and called that Adam. Every one of them called him and her Adam, A-D-A. It tells you that very clear right there in Genesis chapter 5. God called them both Adam. Why? Because that's the first building block. And that's what that word right there first. And I know we call this, and we got this said, well, that's the first day. The word day in Hebrew is yom, and the word yom means facets of life. It means abundant life. It means happy life. That's what the word means. It's actually translated that way. In Psalms 91, it says, with long life. Just look up the word long life in your concordance or your dictionary there in Psalms 91. With long life, that word long life is yom. So it ain't got nothing to do with the day. But that's what we got translated. So he says he joined this together, this first thing that happened. That's what the word echad means. Now I can take you over to Genesis chapter 25 and verse 25, and I can show you the word first again, and it's actually the word rishon. Now, you listen to the difference. Echad, first, rishon. Completely different sound, spelled completely different, but rishon means first. Like he's first place. Like he's number one. So if that's, why didn't they use rishon right there? They didn't. Because I'm trying to get us to see it's a code, it's a formula that builds the structure of the physical body. And the first building block you've got to have right here is this right here. And then, I want you, the beauty of this is the first 8 verses. I'm going to put this out for us, for you to think. The first 8 verses aren't representing 2 different days, but they're representing the beginnings of the facets of a life, or in other words, it's base material. So these first 8 verses are going to represent carbon in a chemistry base. So that's what you start out with. You're more carbon than you are anything. And where did you get the carbon from? You got it from the mineral of the earth. I mean, where did God get it? That's where He got it. From the very minerals of the earth, because it's more carbon. And so that's what this is the first facet of life. And this is the first part of that life that God is marrying the aleph to the yod. Okay, you follow that with me? So let me keep reading verse 6, and it's God said, let there be a firmament. I'm not going to get on it this morning, but next week I'm going to get on this firmament thing. Because when you start to see the code, you begin to say these words and how they unravel, how they begin to unfold. It's just phenomenal what we'll see. Firmament. Now, of course, we call the firmament a lot of different things. Even 25 years ago, I used to say the firmament is that's between the waters above and the waters below. Well, that is true somewhat, but you got to realize the waters above and the waters below are not the clouds in the sky and the water in the rivers. Actually, the waters above and the waters below are right here in this physical body, because this physical body is the Shamayim. Got translated for the word heaven. But the physical body is made up of the 2 different facets of water. The waters from above and the waters from below. And it's the waters from above and the waters from below that are merged and married together so that they all become one. I mean, you know, we see the rivers, the lakes, and everything on the earth that runs into the ocean, and then what does the sun do? It draws it back up into the sky, and what does it do from there? It turns it back loose down into the rivers and the lakes, and runs it back into the ocean, and it's a constant cycle. It's just one.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. So, all right, then let's read on down here. Verse 6 says, God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament
divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening, see what God called the firmament? The waters above and the waters below? What did he call it?
Heaven.
Heaven. Heaven. Heaven. And ain't it somewhere way out yonder?
Mm-hmm.
Again. Okay. All right. I have to repeat a lot of this, but I don't want to make it boring. God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the what?
The second.
The second. That is the Hebrew word shani. Shani. Go with me to Genesis chapter 41. Genesis chapter 41. Can y'all say shani?
Shiny.
Shani. Almost like saying Shawnee, where we used to go eat. Shawnee. Okay. Genesis chapter 41, and look at verse 43. Everybody found it?
Yeah.
And he made him to ride in the, what?
Second chariot.
That's the Hebrew word mishneh. Mishneh. And you know what it means? Number 2. It means second. That's what it means. Now why didn't they use this word over here in Genesis? Verse 8. Chapter 1 verse 8. Why didn't they use this Hebrew word? This Hebrew word, mishneh. And it actually means duplicate. It means second. So the word that we see over here in Genesis 1:8, shoneh, you know what that word means? It means either or again. Either, and it's translated that way, either or again. So this second facet of life is again a reproduction of the first facet of life. It's not separate, it's not different, it's not another day. You know, and God up there working his yoni's off, working his tail off, worked so hard, you know, it's a big world, y'all. A lot of hard work there. Working himself silly, working his fingers to the bone. I'm talking, working his fingers to the bone now. And finally, after 6 days of this laborious hard work, he said, y'all, I got to take a break. Let's call it the Sabbath day. God, the time we get to the Sabbath, S-E-V-E-N-T-H, and you start to see it ain't, never was intended to be the Sabbath, S-A-B-B-A-T-H. I mean, you ought to all be running and shouting. Because you've got to realize all of this is about God marrying you. And nobody can put asunder that relationship. That is a union that's truly made in heaven. That's one that is truly built by God and it works by God.
Bye.
Yeah, it is. So the understanding of these glyphs and the seeing of these things as we begin to open our eyes and open our minds to think out of the box of religion, good gracious, it's transforming. It's changing. And it will definitely put some dance in your feet so that we can start to dance in this game that we call life. That's what God is designed for us to do. That's where God is taking us. Out of war, out of hate, out of struggle, out of pain, out of all that blame, out of all of those things that we were taught in Christianity. I was taught in Christianity to hate the devil, to fight the devil. This, that, and all. Not only that, his people, they're going to all burn in hell anyway. And so you've got the struggle going on in the earth that's between the Christians and the non-Christians, which is not any different in the ISIS Muslim religion and the Koran, where the Koran says the only thing to do with the infidel is to kill him. And you understand who an infidel is, don't you? An infidel is a non-believer. That's why they constantly have war over there. They're constantly in battle to kill each other. And they're killing each other, brothers and sisters. I mean, it's ridiculous. But it's going on for hundreds, thousands of years, and they constantly do it. And we get drawn into it. We constantly get drawn into it. And Christianity is one of the biggest promoters of this kind of warfare, of this kind of religious garbage. And it's so hard for us to see. And I'm not trying to be ugly. I'm not trying to throw stones. I'm not trying to blame. I'm not trying to point the finger at Christianity. My goodness, in essence, I really call myself a Christian, but I don't like to be associated with the Christians. I mean, you know, they're mean. I'm talking, they're mean. It's like Mahatma Gandhi says. He said, I love the Christ, but I don't necessarily love their people.
That's true.
And that's the truth. That's what, you know, and Mahatma Gandhi changed the world for a better place, you know. He brought down the warfare between Great Britain and the nation of India, where they were killing them. But anyway. Okay, so we're just going to stop right here, and we'll pick up here next time we get together. I'm going to try to get on the firmament. That's going to be very interesting, and we're going to spend some more time on the Asher, the wedding vow between God and you, the marrying between the source. I call it God. I hate to have to call it God, but it's the only word that that's about communicate with. Especially with people who aren't familiar with the term source or the terms that we should be using. The so-called word God should not have even been translated from the word Elohim. It should not have been that. Next time we come together, I'm going to put Elohim up here on the board and spell it and to show you it should have never been translated for the word God in Genesis 1, but it was. And even the ancient Hebrew, they're not going to call it God. They understand that it's not, because God is, we say that word, God is some singular person out there somewhere. And God is no singular nothing. God is everything, everywhere. God is in everything, no matter where it's at in the entire universe, and He does it all at the same time. Not part here, part there. It fills all, everything. Now we have to put that in their pipe and smoke on that. Now that'll get you high. That'll get you trying to figure. You can't figure that out, folks. Don't even try to. It's just like trying to figure out how that this glip, Aleph Hey, source, lives, Yod Hey, Yod, that's duality, lives. It's trying to figure out how that works. There ain't no way to figure it out. We can point it out and say, yes, it is, but how does it do it? You ain't going to figure it out. We can't figure it. You know what we do? We just accept it. We just accept it. It is. Life is, right? It is. Life just, it is. All right, well, let me quit right there. And any